Hey Lions, it's so good to see you. We're going to get started reading again with our novel Wonder. I can't wait to see what happens next. Before we start with our read aloud, I just want to take a minute to talk about the plot of this story. The plot, it sounds like a big fancy word, but all it means is to think about the important events that have happened so far in the story. And there's a special name for different elements of the plot, whether it's where the plot or the events are building up or when they start to get resolved. So I've got an organizer to help us with this. Now, before I show you the organizer, I want to make sure you know we're only going to look at one part of this. So don't be overwhelmed when I show it to you. Okay, let me minimize the picture of me so you can look at my organizer. And I always find that the easiest thing to do when thinking about the most important parts of the story is to think, what is the great problem in a novel? So in novels, obviously there's lots of problems that happen to get resolved. Some are kind of small problems, some are really big problems. And the big problem, like where the rubber meets the road, um, where the whole story is building up to that moment is what's called the climax of the story. The word climax, it sounds like a big fancy word, but it's really, it comes from the Greek language. A lot of our words come from Latin and Greek words. And what the word climax actually means is stairs or ladder. And so, you think about a story about stairs or a ladder, and you're building up, you're climbing up the stairs, you're climbing up the ladder to get to the highest point. And that's where, like, the great tension lies, where things are just a mess. And then what happens is the mess starts to get cleaned up, or the problem starts to be fixed. And that's when you have the falling action. So as you're climbing the stairs or ladder, that's the rising action. Until you get to the top of the ladder or the top of the staircase, that's called the climax. And that's where the big mess is. And then you start to climb down, or the ladder, or climb down the stairs. And it's called the falling action. Hopefully no one's falling down the actual stairs or the ladder. Okay, so the climax, remember, is just a big fancy word for, well, what's the mess in the story? What's the big problem that needs to be resolved? And so it's really interesting the way this author, R.J. Palacio, has set this story up. We know it's been first-person narrative from lots of different people's viewpoints. And I noticed a pattern. Every single section that's been from someone's point of view has stopped at pretty much the same point in the story. And it all stops pretty much where Augie has overheard Jack talking about him. And the reason why that is so important is because it devastated him. He felt so betrayed, and it was just so hurtful to Augie. And it seems like everything is revolving around that issue. So that is what I think the climax of this story is, because everything so far that's happened in the story has led up to this problem. And have a feeling soon we're going to start to see a resolution to this problem. Boy, I sure hope so. Okay, so the climax, remember, it's just the big mess. It's where is it really messy? What is the great big problem in the story? And so I believe it's when Augie was dressed in his costume and he overheard Jack. So we're just going to type that. It's as simple as that. So we're going to say Augie. And let me zoom in a little more so you can see better. Okay, I'll probably need to scroll up just a tiny bit. Here we go. So I'm going to say Augie was dressed in a Halloween costume, and he overheard Jack talking about him. And I'm going to add how it made him feel because, some people might be like, whatever, blow it off. But this was crushing and devastating to Augie. So let's add this. Augie was dressed in a Halloween costume and he overheard Jack talking about him, which was devastating. And I'm going to add a crushing blow. Whatever we speak is really what we should put in written form. So I said that out loud to you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and just type it. Okay, it was a crushing blow. And I really want to emphasize that this is a big, big deal because remember, the climax is a big mess. So I want to fully capture what a big deal this was. And I think it's also important that I add in here that Jack didn't know Augie heard him. Because if he had have known that he heard him, maybe it would have been resolved quickly. But a lot of time has gone by, and this issue has just been brewing, and it's just been unresolved. So I'm going to say Jack had no idea. And I'll say why, because he didn't know Augie was dressed as Scream. Okay. All right, that's it. So this looks overwhelming. It's not. We're going to go into different pieces of it. But all this is, boys and girls, is an organizer to help you capture what the important ideas are in a text. And that's what good reading is about. And that's how we can enjoy literature, is by making sure we understand the plot and the characters and the conflict and the resolution. And so when we do activities like this, we want to see what you took away from the story, because then it helps us to know what should we continue teaching, what can we move on from. So it's always about helping us to know what our next steps are. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get back to our read aloud. I have been looking forward to this all day. Okay, so the next chapter is called Private School. Remember, we are reading from Jack's point of view, and so he's just doesn't know why Augie has kind of like ghosted him. You like how I'm up on the terminology, ghosting someone. So when like you fade away from somebody, he's just really confused. He doesn't quite understand what happened, and he's missing them. Okay, private school. My parents are not rich. I say this because people sometimes think that everyone who goes to private school is rich, but that isn't true with us. Dad's a teacher and mom's a social worker, which means they don't have those kinds of jobs where people make gazillions of dollars. We used to have a car, but we sold it when Jamie started kindergarten at Beecher Prep. We don't live in a big townhouse or in one of those doorman buildings along the park. We live on the top floor of a 5-story walk-up we rent from an old lady named Donna Petra, all the way on the other side of Broadway. That's code for the section of North River Heights where people don't want to park their cars. Me and Jamie share a room. I overhear my parents talk about things like, can we do without an air conditioner one more year? Or maybe I can work 2 jobs this summer. So today at recess, I was hanging out with Julian and Henry and Miles. Julian, who everyone knows is rich, was like, I hate that I have to go back to Paris this Christmas. It's so boring. Dude, but it's like Paris, I said, like an idiot. Believe me, it's so boring. Boy, I'd like to be bored if it's in Paris. My grandmother lives in this house in the middle of nowhere. It's like an hour away from Paris in this tiny, tiny village. I swear, nothing happens there. I mean, it's like, oh, wow, there's another fly on the wall. Look, there's a new dog sleeping on the sidewalk. Yippee. I laughed. Sometimes Julian could be very funny. Though my parents are talking about throwing a big party this year instead of going to Paris. I hope so. What are you doing over break? Said Julian. Just hanging out, I said. You're so lucky, he said. I hope it snows again, I answered. I got this new sled that is so amazing. I was about to tell him about lightning, but Miles started talking first. I got a new sled too. My dad got it from Hammaker Schlemmer. It's so state of the art. How could a sled be state of the art? Asked Julian, or said Julian. It was like $800 or something. Whoa. We should all go sledding and have a race down Skeleton Hill, I said. That hill's so lame, answered Julian. Are you kidding? I said. Some kid broke his neck there. That's why it's called Skeleton Hill. Julian narrowed his eyes and looked at me like I was the biggest moron in the world. It's called Skeleton Hill because it was an ancient Indian burial ground. Duh, he said. Anyway, it should be called Garbage Hill now. It's freaking junky. Last time I was there, it was so gross, like with soda cans and broken bottles and stuff. He shook his head. I left my old sled there, said Miles. It was the crappiest piece of junk, and somebody took it, too. Ooh, I have a prediction. I bet you it's the sled that Jack took home and painted. Maybe a hobo wanted to go sledding, laughed Julian. Where did you leave it? I said. By the big rock at the bottom of the hill. And I went back the next day and it was gone. I couldn't believe somebody actually took it. Here's what we can do, said Julian. Next time it snows, my dad could drive us all up to this golf course in Westchester that makes Skeleton Hill look like nothing. Hey, Jack, where are you going? I had started to walk away. I've got to get a book out of my locker. I lied. I just wanted to get away from them fast. I didn't want anyone to know that I was the hobo who had taken the sled. Just so you know, guys, friends make you feel better. They don't make you feel bad about yourself. So I just wanted to say that. It doesn't seem as if you know there's a true friendship there. Your friends should make your heart feel better, and we should make our friends' hearts feel better. Okay, in science. I'm not the greatest student in the world. I know some kids actually like school, but I honestly can't say I do. I like some parts of school, like PE and computer class and lunch and recess. But all in all, I'd be fine without school. And the thing I hate the most about school is all the homework we get. It's not enough that we have to sit through class after class and try to stay awake while they fill our heads with all this stuff we will probably never need to know. Like how to figure out the surface area of a cube or what the difference is between kinetic and potential energy. I'm like, who cares? I've never ever heard my parents say the word kinetic in my entire life. I hate science the most out of all my classes. We get so much work, it's not even funny. And the teacher, Ms. Rubin, is so strict about everything, even the way we write our headings on the top of our papers. I once got 2 points off a homework assignment because I didn't put the date on the top. Crazy stuff. When me and August were still friends, I was doing okay in science because August sat next to me, and he always let me copy his notes. August has the neatest handwriting of anybody I've ever seen who's a boy. Even his script is neat, up and down perfectly with really small, round, loopy letters. But now that we're ex-friends, it's bad because I can't ask him to let me copy his notes anymore. So I was kind of scrambling today, trying to take notes about what Ms. Rubin was saying. My handwriting is awful. When all of a sudden she started talking about the fifth grade science fair project, how we all had to choose a science project to work on. While she was saying this, I was thinking, we just finished the Egypt project. Now we have to start a whole new thing. And then in my head, I was going, oh no. I like that kid in Home Alone with his mouth hanging open and his hands on his face. That was the face I was making on the inside. And then I thought of those pictures of melting ghost faces I've seen somewhere where the mouths are open wide and they're screaming. And then all of a sudden, this picture flew into my head, this memory. and I knew what Summer had meant by bleeding scream. It's so weird how it all just came to me in this flash. Someone in homeroom had dressed up in a bleeding scream costume on Halloween. I remember seeing him a few desks away from me, and then I remember not seeing him again. Oh man, it was August. All of this hit me in science class while the teacher was talking. Oh man, I've been talking to Julian about August. Oh man. Now I understood. I was so mean. I don't even know why. I'm not even sure what I said, but it was bad. Oh, it was only for a minute or two. It's just that I knew Julian and everybody thought I was so weird for hanging out with August all the time, and I felt stupid. And I don't know why I said that stuff. I was just going along. I'm stupid. I'm stupid. Oh gosh. He was supposed to come as Boba Fett. I would have never said that stuff in front of Boba Fett. But that was him, that bleeding scream sitting at the desk looking over at us. The long white mask with the fake squirting blood, the mouth open wide, like the ghoul was crying. That was him. I felt like I was going to puke. Oh boy. So obviously Jack has figured it out. And it's interesting. He said, I only went along with it. I only said a little bit. You know, we should never go along with what people are doing just to try to be cool. We always need to stand up for what's right. That's so important. Um, One time I had someone say to me, I remember this from when I was a little kid, and they talked about having brownies, and they described this delicious pan of brownies, and they said, would you eat it if there was just a little bit of cow manure in it? And of course the answer is no. And the whole point of it was, even if it's wrong, even if it's just a little bit, it just messes everything up. So even though Jack only said a little bit and it was just for a short amount of time, it really had a pretty profound or big impact. It was very damaging. So what's wrong is wrong. So I just think about what Mrs. Cox always says, what's the next right thing to do? So I hope Jack does that. And I think he will. He sounds very remorseful. That means he sounds sorry for what he did. When he said, I feel like I was going to puke, that really lets us know he feels really bad about it. And I think he's going to try to make it right. So hopefully Augie accepts that. Okay, let's keep reading. Partners. I didn't hear a word of what Miss Rubin was saying after that. Blah, blah, blah. Science fair project. Blah, blah, blah. Partners. Blah, blah. It was like the way grown-ups talk in Charlie Brown movies, like someone talking underwater. Mwah, 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 mwah. Then all of a sudden, Miss Rubin started pointing to kids around the class. Reed and Tristan, Maya and Max, Charlotte and Jimena, August and Jack. She pointed to us when she said this. Miles and Amos, Julian and Henry, Savannah and I didn't hear the rest. Huh? I said. The bell rang. So don't forget to get together with your partners to choose a project from the list, guys, said Ms. Rubin as everyone started taking off. I looked up at August, but he had already put his backpack on and was practically out the door. I must have had a stupid look on my face because Julian came over and said, looks like you and your best bud are partners. He was smirking when he said this. I hated him so much right then. Hello, Earth to Jack Will, he said, and then I didn't answer him. Shut up, Julian. I was putting my loose leaf binder away in my backpack and just wanted him away from me. You must be so bummed you got stuck with him, he said. You should tell Miss Rubin you want to switch partners. I bet she'd let you. No, she wouldn't, I said. Ask her. No, I don't want to. Miss Rubin, Julian said, turning around and raising his hand at the same time. Someone needs to have to talk with Julian. Miss Rubin was erasing the chalkboard at the front of the room. She turned when she heard her name. No, Julian, I screamed. What is it, boys? She said impatiently. Could we switch partners if we wanted to? Said Julian, looking very innocent. Me and Jack had this science fair project idea we wanted to work on together. Well, I guess we could arrange that, she started to say. No, it's okay, Miss Rubin, I said quickly, heading out the door. Bye. Julian ran after me. Why'd you do that? He said, catching up to me at the stairs. We could have been partners. You don't have to be friends with that freak if you don't want to be, you know. And that's when I punched him right in the mouth. Ooh. The next chapter is called Detention. Some things you just can't explain. You don't even try. You don't know where to start. All your sentences would jumble up like a giant knot if you open your mouth. Any words you used would come out wrong. Jack, this is very, very serious, Mr. Tushman was saying. I was in his office, sitting on a chair across from his desk and looking at this picture of a pumpkin on the wall behind him. Kids get expelled for this kind of thing. Jack, I know you're a good kid, and I don't want that to happen, but you have to explain yourself. This is so not like you, Jack, said Mom. She'd come from work as soon as they had called her. I could tell she was going back and forth between really mad and really surprised. I thought you and Julian were friends, said Mr. Tushman. We're not friends, I said, my arms crossed in front of me. But to punch someone in the mouth, Jack, said Mom, raising her voice. I mean, what were you thinking? She looked at Mr. Tushman. Honestly, he's never hit anyone before. He's just not like that. Julian's mouth was bleeding, Jack, said Mr. Tushman. You knocked out a tooth. Did you know that? It was just a baby tooth, I said. Jack, said Mom, shaking her head. That's what Nurse Molly said. You're missing the point, Mom yelled. I just want to know why, said Mr. Tushman, raising his shoulders. It'll just make everything worse, I sighed. Just tell me, Jack. I shrugged, but I didn't say anything. I just couldn't. If I told him that Julian had called August a freak, then he'd go back to talk to Julian about it. Then Julian would tell how I had badmouthed August too, and everybody would find out about it. Jack, said Mom. I started to cry. I'm sorry. Mr. Tushman raised his eyebrows and nodded, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he kind of blew into his hands, like you know when your hands are cold. Jack, he said, I don't really know what to say here. I mean, you punched a kid. We have rules about that kind of thing, you know? Automatic expulsion. And you're not even trying to explain yourself. I was crying a lot by now. And the second Mom put her arms around me, I started to bawl. Let's, said Mr. Tushman, taking off his glasses to clean them. Let's do this, Jack. We're out for winter break as of next week anyway. How about you stay home for the rest of this week, and then after winter break, you'll come back and everything will be fresh and brand new. Clean slate, so to speak. Am I being suspended? I sniffled. Well, he said, shrugging. Technically, yes, but it's only for a couple of days. And I'll tell you what, while you're at home, you take the time to think about what happened. And if you want to write me a letter explaining what happened and a letter to Julian apologizing, then we won't even put any of this in your permanent record, okay? You go home and talk about it with your mom and dad, and maybe in the morning you'll figure it out a bit more. That sounds like a good plan, Mr. Tushman, said Mom, nodding. Thank you. Everything is going to be okay, said Mr. Tushman, walking over to the door, which was closed. I know you're a nice kid, Jack. And I know that sometimes even nice kids do dumb things, right? He opened the door. Thank you for being so understanding, said Mom, shaking his hand at the door. No problem. He leaned over and told her something quietly that I couldn't hear. I know. Thank you, said Mom, nodding. So, kiddo, he said to me, putting his hands on my shoulders, think about what you've done, okay? And have a great holiday. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa. I wiped my nose with my sleeve and started walking out the door. Say thank you to Mr. Tushman, said Mom, tapping my shoulder. I stopped and turned around, but I couldn't look at him. Thank you, Mr. Tushman, I said. Bye, Jack, he answered. Then I walked out the door. Season's greetings. Weirdly enough, when we got back home and Mom brought in the mail, There were holiday cards from both Julian's family and August's family. Julian's holiday card was a picture of Julian wearing a tie, looking like he was about to go to the opera or something. August's holiday card was of a cute old dog wearing reindeer antlers, a red nose, and red booties. There was a cartoon bubble above the dog's head that read, "Ho, ho, ho." On the inside of the card, it read, "To the Will family, peace on earth. Love, Nate, Isabel, Olivia, August, and Daisy." Cute card, huh? I said to Mom, who had hardly said a word to me all the way home. I think she honestly just didn't know what to say. "That must be their dog," I said. "Do you want to tell me what's going on inside your head, Jack?" She answered me seriously. "I bet you they put a picture of their dog on the card every year," I said. She took the card from my hands and looked at the picture carefully. Then she raised her eyebrows and her shoulders and gave me back the card. "We're very lucky, Jack. There's so much we take for granted." "I know," I said. I knew what she was talking about with her having to say it. I heard that Julian's mom actually photoshopped August's face out of the class picture when she got it. She gave a copy to a couple of the other moms. "That's just awful," said Mom. "People are they're not always so great." "I know. Is that why you hit Julian?" "No." And then I told her why I punched Julian, and I told her that August was my ex-friend now, and I told her about Halloween. I bet that was a relief for Jack to get that out. It's hard to keep things like that in. I recommend if you're ever dealing with something, really heavy like that, tell someone you trust. It will definitely help. All right, Lions, we're going to leave off from here. And boy, even though things seem pretty dark and bad right now in this story, sometimes things have to get to that point before they can get better. So I'm hopeful when we pick up on this story tomorrow that we're going to start having that falling action and things are going to start to resolve and get better for all the characters involved. All right, Lions, thanks for joining me. I can't wait to see you tomorrow to continue our read aloud. Just a reminder, today we reviewed what Climax is. And don't forget, the climax of a story is where the big mess or the big tension, like the big bang is in the story, where you climb the ladder to the tip top and right before things start to get better. And so we feel like the climax of the story is when Augie overheard Jack talking about him, and Jack had no idea because Augie was dressed in a costume. Remember, the word climax comes from the Greek language, and it means staircase or ladder. So you can just kind of picture that in your mind when you hear that word when we're talking about a story. And the reason why we're taking the time to look at the plot and the different elements of this story is because that's what reading's all about, is to make sure we understand the important parts. All right, signing off for today. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye, Lions.